What's going on, everybody? It is the NFL Expert Special Friday edition. I'm Wayne G, joined as always by Mark D. What's going on, Mark?
What up, Wayno? I am on location again at B-Dubs, but at this point I don't have a cocktail yet, but that will be coming soon.
Excellent. I've got my Coke Zero. If they want to give us a promotional deal, I'm happy to take as much free Coke Zero as possible. No money, just free Coke Zero.
I'm working on that, actually, Wayno. I'm going to hopefully get us a promotion soon.
Oh, there we go. Perfect. And obviously, we do have a good show today. If you've looked at the title of the episode, it is Free Agency Week 2. We're going to be discussing some of the things that have happened. It's slowed down a little bit. We're going to talk about the Bears and the Chiefs and what they need in the NFL draft. And then we're going to go through some questions. But before we get to those, let's make sure we are following on social media at NFL Experts. That's plural, NFL Experts Pod. So that's on Twitter at NFL Experts Pod. That's on Instagram at NFL Experts Pod. That's on YouTube at NFL Experts Pod. On TikTok. And also, if you want to email us, it's NFLExpertsPod@gmail.com. We're interactive. Mark has had people write in and submit questions. We love answering fan questions. Nope.
Yes, please chime in. We monitor everything, so we love the interaction. Please send emails, comments, whatever, man. We love it.
All right. Now, as I mentioned, we do have a show filled with free agency talk, and the big thing that came up first is, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on this, your team, Russell Wilson, actually goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers for the league minimum $1.2 million. Then they turn around and they trade a 6th-round pick and bring in Justin Fields. And this completely perplexed me. I didn't understand why they would do this, and I'm curious to get your thoughts if you have a theory as to why they went after Justin Fields after already signing Russell Wilson.
I do have a theory, Wayne. My theory is I don't because they're paying these guys like nothing. I feel like they're gonna, even though they told Russell, "Hey, you're the starter," I don't really think that is like set in stone. And like I think they're gonna wait till training camp and stuff and see how each of them plays. And because they don't have so much money tied into either of them, they can cut either one of them at any time. So I really feel like Russell Wilson, he's the type that he doesn't really look good at practice. Not to say that he's not a good quarterback, but he's more the off script. That's where you see him in his best, and you don't really see that in practice. So that's what I mean by that. So yeah, he's gonna have to look over his shoulder, I think, and if he doesn't at least play like he did last year for us, even though the numbers would sort of lie to you, that he's got to look over his shoulder at Justin Fields because Justin Fields is young, got a lot of talent, and I think Pittsburgh also likes him a lot too. That's probably why they brought him in. So I don't know. Like I said, I think Russell needs to look out, but I don't think his job is set in stone.
Well, you said that they can cut either one if they don't like them. But my question is, they traded Kenny Pickett to the Eagles, I think. So my question is, would they cut one of these guys, or would they expect one of them to play the backup role?
Okay, well, maybe cut was the wrong word, but yeah, one of them is going to be a backup. I don't know. Like, I don't think necessarily Russell is guaranteed the QB job, even though they say he is. So, yeah, I shouldn't have said cut, but one of them is going to be a backup, and they're going to have to deal with it. But I think at some point, one of them will struggle, and the other one will start. That's kind of what I feel like is going to happen.
Well, let me ask you about this and get your thoughts on why this might have happened. Apparently, Justin Fields, when the Bears were looking to trade him, he vetoed 4 trades that they were looking to make and said, I want to go to Pittsburgh and play with Russell Wilson. Now, is this because he feels like he can learn from Russell Wilson as like another scrambling quarterback, or because he thinks he can beat Russell Wilson out for the job?
I think it was option 2. I think that he thinks he can beat out Russ because all the other places that he probably was going to go, he probably wasn't guaranteed anything about starting. So I feel like, so it kind of brings up to my point. Like I was saying, I feel like a lot of the reason he came to Pittsburgh is because he knows that he has a shot, and he knows that Russell's kind of on the decline, and and he's a lot younger, and they kind of have the same skill set. So yeah, I think that's why he went there.
Well, here's a scenario I'm going to roll out there is, let's say that Justin Fields doesn't win the starting job. And I don't think he's going to. I think that Russell Wilson's going to win the job and Justin Fields is going to be the backup. So he's the backup for a year. This is the last year of his rookie contract, or I'll say the fourth year. There's a fifth-year team option if they choose to pick that up. It's $25.7 million. What are the chances, maybe even after training camp, if Russell Wilson does win the starting job, that they do a similar situation to what they did with Jordan Love in Green Bay, and they give him, let's say, a 2-year extension for $20 million a year, just so that they can get him for one more season after sitting the bench?
Yeah, man, I can totally see that happening. And I guess Russ is the type that he's willing to help him. I don't know. I don't really see that, but I kind of feel like Russ is going to struggle like he did here. And at some point, they're going to want Fields to play, and he's going to get his shot.
Well, my take on Fields, and I've made this clear in multiple episodes, is that I'm a huge Justin Fields fan. I wanted him to go to the Patriots. I think he's got a cannon for an arm. We know how mobile he is. He did run for 1,000 yards a couple seasons ago. But when you look at his stats, he has not improved year over year. It would be one thing to see if you saw a little bit of improvement from one year to the next, but last year he was the same quarterback he was the year before. There was no improvement. So my question is, I guess, can he get better, or is this the best he's going to be?
That's a very good question, Wayne. I kind of debate that myself in my head. Obviously, the Bears they don't think that he's going to get any better. That's probably why they're going to move on. And I'm kind of in that mindset. I don't really think he's going to get better. And maybe he is going to Pittsburgh to have Russ help him. I don't know. I don't know if that's a whole lot of help, in my opinion, but I don't know. I'm not totally sure what his thinking is, because if he had a chance to start somewhere and he didn't take that job, I think that's a mistake.
Well, that would be the mistake that Tim Tebow made back when they were looking to trade him from Denver, the quarterback from Denver, where they offered him to go to the Jaguars. He would have been the starter in Jacksonville, and he chose to go to the Jets, where they already had Mark Sanchez. And then I think that was a mistake to go to the Jets. They used him as a punt protector. He never even got a chance to play quarterback.
Huge mistake. Like I think he went there for that New York media. I don't really think he knew he was going to get a chance to start. So he was like, "Oh, I don't get paid." You know.
Well, the other thing that happened, we have another trade with the Chicago Bears, and that is the Chicago Bears traded away a 4th-round pick, and they brought in Keenan Allen from the LA Chargers. Now, they already have DJ Moore there. They have Cole Kmet. They also signed Gerald Everett from the Chargers as well. They signed DeAndre Swift to play running back. It seems like obviously they're going to be drafting a quarterback, whether it's at 1 or 2, and we'll talk about that when we get to the Bears. But whatever rookie quarterback they do bring in is going to have a lot of weapons.
Yeah, man, this is probably the best scenario that a number 1 pick could ask for. Like, he has all these weapons that they set him up with. They're going to have a decent defense. They're going to be able to build a little bit more with their draft picks, like we're going to talk about later. I think he's in a really good spot. I think the Bears did right by this, because I didn't think the Bears had it in them to help develop a quarterback, because they've never done that. So getting Keenan Allen is huge, because that guy had his best season last year. So, and a lot of reason he got cut is because he refused to take a pay cut, which I understand, because he had his best season. Why would you take a pay cut? So good for him. Bad for the Chargers, because I'm not totally sure what Herbert has to throw to now. So yeah, I think Caleb Williams is set up real nice, man.
Well, I'm glad you brought up that he had his best season, because one of the things I wanted to bring up was his statistics from last year. He had 108 receptions for 1,243 yards and 7 touchdowns in 13 games. So if you take that and you average it out and then multiply by 17 to give him a full season, he would have had 141 catches for 1,625 yards. This guy might have been the best receiver in the NFL last year.
And see, that's what I mean. It's that he wasn't going to take the pay cut. So the Chargers are kind of doing Charger things, like I always say, and not paying their best guys. I know Harbaugh's there now. Maybe Harbaugh wants to bring in some young talent, but this is huge for the Bears. Like now they have 2 legitimate wide receiver 1 receivers. So Caleb's going to have all kinds of people to throw to, and the Bears are going to look really good next year.
Well, the Minnesota Vikings also made a trade. They traded back into the first round, essentially, with the Houston Texans. And here's the cool thing. the Vikings got a first round pick and they didn't have to give up a first this year or next year. They only gave up a couple of seconds and they get a first round pick in this year's draft. Now they have number 11 and they have number 23. We talked about in a previous episode, they need a quarterback, big time hard, need a quarterback. So are they going to take a quarterback at 11 or 23, or are they going to package 11 and 23 and move up into the top 5?
Dude, they're totally packaging them to move up. Like, I don't know for which quarterback. So let me ask you this, Wayne. I'm not really familiar on like the value of each pick and whatever else. So, like, what would they have to give up to get like number 3? Would their 2 first work to get 3, or would they have to give up more?
I think they'd have to give up a little bit more, but not much. So maybe like 11, 23, and then like a third next year.
So it is possible that they could move to 3, because we were talking on a previous episode that the Patriots are probably a team that wants to move down for extra draft capital. So I'm kind of looking at them as the team that they're going to target. So would you, as a Patriots fan, would you be all right with that?
I think I would, but I'd be curious what their long-term plan is, what they're planning on doing with picks 11 and 23. I do think that they also need a quarterback, but they need everything on offense, like literally everything. So they need as many picks as they can get. If they can turn 11 and 23 into a starting offensive tackle, obviously Joe Alt will be gone, but Fashanu will be there. Fuaga will be there. That's a guy that could get 11. At 23, you're looking at Michael Penix, Spencer Rattler, Bo Nix. You know, Penix is my favorite out of those 2. If they came away with Penix and Fashanu in the first round, I'd be totally fine with that.
So that's what you think that their head is at, is that they want more guys that can start instead of packaging it for that quarterback that they value, because they just let go of Kirk Cousins.
They did, and I think that it does make sense to move up, and they're adding pieces as well. I think as the season goes on, they got Aaron Jones, so that kind of replaced the running back in Madison, who I actually think still might be there, but I'm not sure. But they do have decent running backs. They still got Justin Jefferson. I know his name has been in the trade market. I don't think he's going anywhere. I think they're going to work something out with him. They've got the other wide receiver, Addison, that they got last year in the first round of the draft. So whatever quarterback they bring in there is going to have weapons as well. So I think that they trade into the top. If they can get to 3 and get McCarthy or May or Daniels, I think Daniels is the project. So if they get Daniels, then they're probably looking at starting Sam Darnold for a year and then Daniels taking over.
I kind of think if they package these picks and move to 3, I think JJ's their guy. I think it's going to go Williams, Daniels, and then JJ if they move to 3.
Okay. Well, again, and we'll talk about it more when we get into the Bears talk, but I do think that JJ is going to go 2, which is why I think that they're going to be picking from May and Daniels.
Very interesting, Wayne.
Well, Aaron Donald retired. He called it a career at 33 years old. He played 10 seasons in the NFL, 111 sacks, 8-time first team All-Pro, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. First question for you on this. Is Aaron Donald's retirement just posturing to get traded to another team, or is he legit hanging it up?
See, I'm glad that you mentioned that. I wouldn't necessarily say posturing to go to another team. I would say maybe he's posturing for another $30 million a year contract, maybe more. But I don't really think that's it. I think he's just really done, and he's accomplished everything he wants to accomplish, and he's done, man. And I think a lot of these players these days are trying to retire early so they don't go through all this head trauma.
That could be the case. I know obviously when Barry Sanders retired way back when, everyone thought he was just trying to get traded, and he just stayed retired. He didn't want to play anymore. And my question, here's an interesting fact you may or may not know. When a player retires, their dead cap hit is exactly the same as if the team cut them. So by Aaron Donald retiring, the Rams are taking a $62 million cap hit this year, or a $31.5 million cap hit this year and next year.
That's rough. That sounds like us with Russell, man. That I did not know that they take such a big cap hit. Is it because he restructured, or is it because they extended him and then he didn't finish out that extension.
Yeah, he still had $62 million of dead cap remaining or guaranteed money.
See, I didn't know that. That sucks for them. I'm sure they're not happy about that.
No, because you're now basically paying the guy $30 million a year, but he's not playing for you.
Yeah, I was just going to say you're paying a guy that's not even playing. That sucks. But when you have a guy like that and what he produced for you for all those years, I guess you deal with it.
Well, which brings me to this question for you, because I know that Sully has made the case for Aaron Donald to be considered amongst the greatest defensive players in the history of the NFL. And I wanted to get your thoughts on where you would rank him historically as one of the greatest defensive players ever.
Yeah, I would say he's up there. I wouldn't say he's the greatest, but I'd say he's in the conversation for top 3 for sure. Definitely.
Who else do you have in that conversation?
I'd say before him, I would go Lawrence Taylor and Mean Joe Green.
Really, Mean Joe Green?
Well, basically not. Maybe not for his stats, but that guy he changed that Pittsburgh team. Once they got him, that's when they started rolling, man. That's when everybody knew that their defense was going to be the best, like the steel curtain, all that. I just feel like he was so innovative at the time.
Well, I'm going to say this, and this is going to be a controversial take on Aaron Donald. He's not even the best Rams defensive player of all time. The best defensive player of the Rams history is Deacon Jones, who I refer to as Sackmaster Flash. Deacon Jones was probably getting 25, 30 sacks a season, but they weren't recording him back then.
You're right, man. He kind of got screwed out of a lot of stats because they weren't recording sacks. But I think the whole word sack came from him. I think he created that word, that term, sack. And yeah, if they were computing all those years, he'd probably be the sack leader.
Now, for me, the greatest defensive players of all time, it starts with Reggie White. I have Reggie White as number 1. I think a lot of people have Lawrence Taylor. You could flip-flop those guys. 1B, 1C, Deion Sanders, I think, has to be considered one of the best defensive players of all time. Although my only knock against Sanders for this conversation is Sanders might not be as good as Darrelle Revis. Like, Revis might be better than Sanders.
Very true. If you look at the stats, I feel like Revis shut down a lot better players in our era than Sanders did. I would kind of agree with that.
Well, I mean, he obviously went up against Randy Moss and held him to nothing. He went up against Megatron, held him nothing. Went up against Terrell Owens, same thing. But also we have to look at Deion Sanders, went up against Jerry Rice, arguably the greatest receiver of all time, multiple times. He went up against Michael Irvin multiple times. Andre Rison he went up against. So he went up against some pretty good players himself.
True. I don't know. That's another one that's up for debate, Wayne.
All right. Well, that is what we had for the first piece of free agent news. We do have some free agent questions we're going to dive into in a minute, but first we want to talk a little bit about the NFL draft, particularly as it relates to 2 teams, the Bears and the Chiefs, because they have the first pick in the first round and the last pick in the first round. And we're going to discuss what their team needs are, what kind of things we expect from them. Let's start with the Chicago Bears. So I'll throw this one to you with my prediction, as I teased earlier in the show. I think the Chicago Bears are going to trade the number 1 overall pick to the Washington Commanders because the Commanders really want Caleb Williams. He's number 1 on their wish list, and there's no number 2. So I think they make that trade. It doesn't cost Washington a lot. I think they make that swap, and maybe the Bears pick up another second-round pick. It's not going to be multiple firsts for that trade. But then at number 2, I think that the Bears draft J.J. McCarthy, who I think is the second best quarterback in this draft.
Wow, Wayno, that's you totally surprised me with all that. I've kind of been on that boat with you. I think Caleb Williams, I don't think he really wants to play Chicago. I'm not sure why. Maybe the cold. I'm not totally sure Washington's much warmer. I don't really know the climates in both of those states. I know it's really cold in Chicago. That's very interesting. And the J.J. McCarthy thing, I didn't realize you thought that highly of him. It's interesting how things change from when we first do these mocks till now, and how our opinions change. That's very interesting, Wayne.
Well, obviously, quarterback is the number one thing that this team needs. It's the number one thing that they're going to get, whether it's at 1 or 2. I guess give me your thoughts. If you're the Chicago Bears GM, do you take Caleb Williams or do you trade back and get a different quarterback?
I think I'm kind of with you now that you say that. I think I'm with you, man. Because they only have 4 picks. They have 1, 9, 75, and 122. So that's 4 picks under the top 150, which is good. But I feel like if they're gonna build, for the future, like they need more capital. And like you said, if they move to 2, they're still gonna get a quarterback. They're not gonna get Caleb, but they might still get, like you said, JJ McCarthy, who could be another really good prospect. Because one of my things is I think that they do need more draft capital. So I think that'd be a great move for them.
And now they address their quarterback, whether it's at 1 or 2. They have the 9th overall pick. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on the 9th pick. What do they need next? Once they get the quarterback situation situated, they've got the receivers now, the tight ends, they've got the running back. What do they need with that number 9 overall pick? What do they do with it?
I think they need defensive line, man. Someone to go with Montez Sweat. I think Sweat was starting to really show that he's really coming together for them. If you can get somebody to pair with him, I think that would be really good for their defense.
I agree with you. I actually have them taking Byron Murphy at number 9. I think that he helps boost their defensive line. He's going to take up double teams, which is going to free up Sweat on the edge. And you can read all about this. By the way, I know I mentioned a couple episodes ago how I lost my job writing for Fansided, but I did get picked up by Stadium Rant. So you can
already got a job.
That's right. Yeah, a writer like me doesn't sit for long. Like people are coming to get me. So I wrote about the Bears and I wrote about their 4 picks. I have Byron Murphy going to number 9 of them, but I'm not opposed to the idea of them trading out of 9 to move back and accumulate more picks. Because like you said, they only have 4.
What if they did that, Wayne, instead? What if they keep 1, but they trade 9 and get assets, and then they still get Caleb?
Well, you said if they trade, or you say keep 1, take Caleb, and then trade out of 9.
Yeah,
they could do that, and or they could even trade back and take, like I said, JJ at 2 and still trade 9 and move back. There's no limit to how many times you can move back, but I do think they collect more assets the further back they go. So depending on who's there at 9 and who's there at 9, they could move back to say in the 20s, accumulate a 2nd round pick this year, an extra one, and a 1st round pick next year to move that far back. And so if I'm them, I'd probably look at doing that and still taking a defensive end or an edge player in the 20s where you could still get a guy like Dallas Turner or a guy like Jared Verse. I think they're going to go a little bit later.
That's a good call because I kind of think that's what they can do. They could trade 9 and still get a defensive lineman that could be really good for them. But I don't think they should trade 1, dude. I think they should keep 1 and get Caleb.
Okay. I mean, it's not bad to get him his best quarterback in the draft. And obviously you're giving him weapons to start off with. So if you do get Caleb, you do move back and get an edge rusher. Then I think you have to start looking at the interior offensive line for them. I think that their tackles are fine, but I think guard and center, that's kind of what they want to look at next.
And see if they trade 9, they could get, because I don't think they have a 2nd round pick, right? If they have 1, 9, and 75, that doesn't mean they have 2. They don't have a 2nd round pick, right?
Correct.
So then trading 9 could get them a 2nd round pick, and then they could get, like you said, a tackle to go along with the defensive lineman and Caleb,
Well, I'm even thinking if they get into the 20s, another guy who might be there is Jackson Powers Johnson, I think it is, out of Oregon, the center. So they could always go and get him at center, and then with that 2nd round pick, get an edge. This edge class is really deep, so they can get somebody in the 2nd round.
Yeah, because see, they can still get somebody in the 1st and get a 2nd, and I feel like that'd be perfect for them. So that'd be ideal situation for them. Get 2 defensive guys that could help out and go pair of Sweat. That'd be great.
Those are my thoughts on the Chicago Bears and what they need. Did you have any other thoughts on the Bears before we move on to the defending Super Bowl champions?
I got one question for you. Do you think that they draft more wide receivers even though they're pretty stacked at wide receiver?
Not with only 4 picks. Again, if they accumulate more picks and they end up with, like, say 6 or 7, maybe they get a 3rd receiver, but it's not an area of deep need. They have other areas of need.
That's kind of what I was thinking too. That was my last question, Wayne.
The Kansas City Chiefs won the Super Bowl again, and now they have the 32nd pick in the draft. They have some needs as well. They did re-sign Chris Jones. They franchise tagged L'Jarius Sneed. They're trying to work out a trade, allegedly, but they're also trying to sign him long-term, allegedly. Who knows what's going to happen there? So
yeah, what's going on there, Wayne?
Let's start off with the first round pick, number 32 overall. What's the biggest area of need that the Chiefs need to address to get back to and win another Super Bowl?
Well, we're going to talk about some of my questions were free agent wide receivers and where you think they went and you think if it was good for them. So part of that answer, one of those answers of mine is that they just got Hollywood Brown, which I think is really good for them. So they might not have to necessarily reach for a wide receiver in the first round. I think a lot of tackles are going to go in the first round, and I think that they're going to go after a tackle, either move up for one they like, or they're going to stay at 32 and pick one.
No, I completely agree. I think that tackle is their biggest area of need. I think that they did not perform well last year. They went out and they signed it was Juwan Taylor from Jacksonville, and he was a disappointment. But they also need another tackle on the other side. And so for me, I have them taking Tyler Guyton. I think he's the guy that's going to be there at the tackle spot. I think that makes the most sense for them at 32, or even trading out of 32, accumulating more picks. I mean, that's one of the things that these teams towards from 20 on can look at trading back out of the first.
Like I showed you in my mock, I kind of feel like they're going to fall in love with a guy and move up. I'm not sure which guy. I thought Fashanu because he's falling, so I thought maybe they'll fall in love with him and draft him. That's kind of my prediction.
Yeah, it's an interesting prediction. Again, I don't, like I told you, they have to fall in love to move up for somebody. If it's just like, hey, we need a tackle position, they can wait and get somebody. And I know you can probably point out that Fashanu is better than Guyton. But again, if you can get Guyton without having to trade draft capital to move up, because now you're losing picks, I think that you just stay where you are and you take Guyton. The next area I think they address is receiver, though. You asked me about that. I know they signed Brown. I know that they have Rashee Rice stepped up big in the playoffs last year. Sky Moore is still there. But that team had a lot of drops. Kelsey dropped a lot of passes. Rashee Rice dropped a lot of passes. It was an issue all season. I think they need to get somebody else. I think they look at a guy like Troy Franklin in round 2.
Oh, I think they're definitely still going to address that an issue. They're going to draft a wide receiver. I don't know if it's like you said. I don't know if it's going to be in the first round or the second, because they could either go flip flop. They could get a wide receiver round 1 and a tackle round 2. Who knows? But I feel like those are definitely two issues of need for them.
It is, and I slipped up when I said Troy Franklin because I actually have them taking Jalen Polk in round 2. Franklin's gone by that point. So if they did want Franklin, that's probably that 32 pick, and then they're looking at the bottom of the second for their tackle. I don't like that as much. Maybe there's a guy like Patrick Paul there, but I think that you try to take Guyton because the gap between 32 and 64 at tackle is bigger than the gap at 32 to 64 receiver.
I totally agree with you. You never know what these teams win. You don't know who they fall in love with, what they think is more important. Who knows?
I also put on here that one of their needs is a change of pace back. They've got Pacheco. He runs hard. He's a physical bruising back. They need somebody who's basically a third down back, or a guy who's shifty and can move around a lot. Edwards-Helaire is gone. He's a free agent. They don't really have a guy, so I have them taking Will Shipley out of Clemson. I think that's the perfect fit and perfectly paired with Pacheco.
So you have him drafting them. You have them drafting Shipley at 64 on the 64th pick?
No, I think in the 4th round.
So the 95 pick?
Yeah.
Okay. I can see that. Like, you don't think that he might be gone before that?
No, I think your first running back's not coming off the board until late 2nd round, maybe even 3rd round. We might not see a running back taken in the first 2 rounds of the draft.
I know Sully said that the running back class is really weak. Do you think maybe, I kind of have this thought that maybe they might move up. They have 7 picks that they can move up to get a better running back. Like maybe they can move up to get Xavier, or what's the guy's name? Jordan Brooks. Is he the number 1 guy, right?
I think Jordan Brooks is the number 1 running back right now on most people's boards. My number 1 running back is actually Trey Benson. That's the guy that I would take first.
Well, I mean, either one of those guys, so they could always move up for one of them if they really like him, if they really think he's a good change of pace. Um, I don't know. I don't really know Andy Reid's drafting philosophy. Is he the type to move up? Does he just wait for his picks? Like, I'm not totally sure.
I'm not sure with him either what his history is. I didn't really research that. I do think that they also need to address corner if they're going to trade L'Jarius Sneed. And then what do they get in exchange for him? And is it enough to replace him? In other words, if they trade Sneed and they get back a 3rd round pick, I don't think you're going to replace him with a 3rd round pick because L'Jarius Sneed is an all pro corner. So then do you use 32 for corner and then tackle and so on? The dominoes fall.
I think if they're smart, they should keep Sneed, and that wouldn't have to be a need when they go into the draft as much. Like I was saying, they have plenty of capital. I don't know. I feel like if they really need a running back, they should move up for a guy they want.
Okay. They could do that. Again, if they get Trey Benson, that's a humongous pick for them. The guy runs a 4.35, and he's probably the best receiving back in the draft. I like him a lot, but we'll see what they end up getting. I do think that they do get a change of pace back, and a change of pace back could be anyone because, like I said, Pacheco's a bruiser, so it could be Jalen Hyatt, it could be Brooks, it could be all those guys are speed backs. You know, they're not going to go get my guy Braylon Allen because he's a bruiser, and that would be too much of the same thing.
But also, I think that one of their needs is defensive line. So with one of these, maybe with the 64 pick, they should draft the defensive lineman, someone to pair with Chris Thomas. Chris, trying to blank on his name. Chris Jones. Sorry, too many J names. Yeah, somebody to pair with Chris Jones. Like I think that he's pretty much all they got on the defensive line. They need somebody else to go with that guy.
Yeah, and it is a deep draft for edge rushers and for defensive linemen. I mean, there's guys like Jordan Jefferson is going to go probably in the 5th or 6th round, you know, so there's plenty of opportunity throughout this draft to get help along the defensive line. I think I was just saying that their number one need to me is tackle, then I think receiver, and then a change of pace back.
But I always hear like the teams that win the Super Bowl, like a lot of their picks are like luxury picks. Do you believe in that, Wayne? Is that something that the Chiefs are doing this year? Is that a lot of them are luxury picks?
They're not luxury picks necessarily. A luxury pick to me is a drafting a player that you don't necessarily need, or taking a position that doesn't have a high value. We talked about tight end and running back are those two types of positions, taking them early. Like when you take a running back, they took Clyde Edwards-Helaire 32 after winning the Super Bowl. And even though I hate taking a running back in round 1, it's never a good idea. Not even Barry Sanders, Emmitt Smith, or Bo Jackson. You never take a running back in 1, but at 32, you just won the Super Bowl. You know, that's a luxury pick. You're just picking a guy you don't really need. If he doesn't pan out, no big deal. And Edwards-Helaire didn't pan out. They still won 2 Super Bowls. So it didn't really matter. So I think that's really what a luxury pick is. I don't agree with taking luxury picks with every pick, you know, but in their case, I don't think they have the luxury of a luxury pick. I think that they need to address a need. They can't just take something because it's shiny.
So then compared to that year when they drafted Edwards-Helaire, they have more needs, and they probably had needs that year, right?
Well, again, they have a need at tackle. So they had a need at running back that year. But like I said, running back's a luxury position. So you don't take it in the first round, even if you need it. You take it in the 2nd round or the 3rd round or the 4th round. They need a tackle. You don't wait until the 3rd round to get a tackle. You take that guy as soon as possible.
Totally agree, man. Totally agree.
So those are our thoughts on the Bears and the Chiefs drafts. If you disagree with our takes or you think they should take somebody else, definitely let us know. We're interested in your thoughts as well. Read my articles on Stadium Rant. They're both very good, very in-depth. I create my own images, so definitely check those out. But I know Mark's going to lead a segment now where we're going to talk about some of the things that happen in free agency and get some thoughts on those.
Yeah, they're just some questions that I came up with, you know, just some thoughts, like some opinion thoughts of like what you thought. I'm just going to go into them. Okay, number 1, who did you think was the best running back signing?
So I actually have 2 different answers for this particular question, because just like I don't believe you should take a running back in the 1st round, I also believe you should never give a running back a huge second contract. It never works out. I say never, but it works out once every blue moon. It worked out with Derrick Henry with the Titans. They gave him a huge second deal. All he did was run for like 1,200 yards every year. So it worked out for them. But usually that doesn't pan out. So for me, I looked at it. One is value. Who got the best value at running back this year in the offseason? And it was the Washington Commanders with Austin Eckler. They replaced Antonio Gibson with Austin Eckler. That's a humongous upgrade, and it only cost them $4.2 million a year, which is a great value. So that's my number one. And then my number two is Derrick Henry to the Ravens, because again, it's $8 million a year. It's double what Eckler's getting, but Derrick Henry is still a guy who's going to run for 1,300 yards. And now Lamar Jackson has this great running back with him.
I totally agree with the Derrick Henry because he's one of mine. My number one, I guess, as I have two also. My one would be Saquon Barkley because I feel like they really need a solid guy. They've always had solid running backs, but I feel like Saquon's built a little different, and I think he's going to explode this year having that offensive line to play in front of. That's a huge one for me, and then the other one would be Derrick Henry, like I said, and I pick him because I thought they should have had him last year. I feel like if they would have had him, they might have had a deeper playoff run than they did because they were horrible running the ball in those playoff games. So, yeah, I would say Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley.
Well, my disappointment with Barkley is going to be the fact that he breaks the rule of the big contract because they did give him $12 million a year. So it breaks that rule. And if history has shown us anything, it is that Saquon Barkley is either going to get injured in the next 2 seasons or he's going to run for 800 yards next year.
I knew you were going to say that. And he had a really good year last year, so maybe this is going to be an injury year. Who knows?
Well, he ran for less than 1,000 yards last year.
Okay, so then maybe he's hurt this year.
So, yeah, that's where I'm at on the running back question.
Question number 2. What was the best non-quarterback signing?
Again, I'm going to roll with value on this one. And I'm going to go with my team, the New England Patriots. They re-signed Mike Onwenu for 3 years and $57 million. He was the best guard in all of football 2 years ago. Last year, he bounced between guard and tackle because they had issues at tackle, and he actually looked really good at tackle. But they got him for $3 and $57. And when you look at Robert Hunt, who signed with Carolina for $5 and $100, $3 and $57 for Onwenu is an absolute steal. So that's the number one non-quarterback signing for me.
I'm going to go with value as well, Wayne. My pick would be, you're not going to like this, Tyron Smith to the Jets. Like, I think, if I looked at the contract, I think he's only really getting guaranteed like $6 million or something like that. And the rest is all incentive-based, which could be up to $20 million. Up to, it does a lot of work this time of year. Sorry for the noise. So I feel like, and then I also read that the Jets didn't even think he was going to take the offer that they offered him. So this is a huge pickup for them because Rodgers needs a solid left tackle to protect him. The only thing that sucks is that he has been injured a lot. So I really hope for Rodgers' sake that he stays healthy. But that would be my number one non-QB signing.
Look at you rooting for Aaron Rodgers to not get hurt. Good for you. You're progressing as a person.
I guess I am, Wayne. I didn't even think of that, but I guess I am.
Now, as a Patriots fan, obviously I'm hoping that Tyron Smith goes down on the first play of the season and Aaron Rodgers goes down on the second play of the season. And then the Jets are toast.
I would be okay with that too, Wayne. All right, third question. What was the best defensive signing?
Now, this is one, and I brought it up last episode, which is Xavier McKinney to the Green Bay Packers. I absolutely love this. I like that you had them drafting Tyler Nubin when we did your mock draft, or we did our mock draft episode. Safety is a big need for them. They don't draft safety. Sully said that. I know that. It's just not a position they draft. So in free agency, they go out, they get Xavier McKinney. I like it a lot. He's only 25 years old. He's an elite safety, and it fills a huge need for them. I think that's a huge, huge boost to their defense.
Wayne, seriously, get out of my head because I seriously was going to say Xavier McKinney, but I decided not to because I kind of thought that you were going to say that. So mine would be Bryce Huff to the Eagles. I think that they're missing Fletcher Cox now, and they missed some defensive pieces. And I think he's going to fill in real nicely. I feel like he's that total type of Philly player, and I think he's going to really help that defense.
So that's a puzzling one to me because I think that the Eagles defense is an enigma. I mean, they add all these pieces. They've got Nakobe Dean. They have Jalen Carter. They've got all these pieces on defense, and they can't play good defense. And then they go and they get more defenders. I don't really know.
You were totally right about that, but I just feel like it's the Philly thing to do is get a guy like this because they're like, oh, he'll fit right in.
Because he doesn't play good defense.
Well, because he's kind of a lower tier guy, you know.
Okay.
Sorry, it's getting loud in here, Wayne. Colorado's playing right now in the tournament, and the game it just went into overtime. So sorry if it's too loud. The next question is, what was the most surprising QB signing?
The New England Patriots signing Jacoby Brissett to 1 year and $8 million deal. Now, it's not surprising that they went out and got a veteran quarterback because they're going to be drafting one. It makes sense to bring in a veteran that can start maybe the first 8-9 games before you bring in your rookie quarterback. That's not what was surprising. What was surprising is it was a 1 year, $8 million deal. And I know that he has ties to New England. So does Jimmy G. And because the Raiders still owe him $30 million, you could have gotten Jimmy G for $1 million. So you paid $7 million more to have Jacoby Brissett.
That's really funny that you mentioned Jimmy G. So once again, get out of my head, Wayne. My most surprising quarterback signing was Jimmy G to the Rams. And I say that because, like I talked to you off air, I didn't even know that Stetson Bennett, their guy they drafted, was a year ago or 2 years ago in the 4th round. And all of a sudden he's just not playing anymore. And I think that's partly why they had Baker that 1 year. And I guess he has some off the field stuff that I didn't know about. So it kind of surprised me. That's like the one thing that really surprised me is that I didn't even know that he wasn't in the league anymore and that they were in need of a backup quarterback. So when they signed him, I was like, why would they sign Jimmy G? Like, they have Stetson Bennett. Then I researched it and found out that all this stuff. So it makes a lot of sense. I guess Jimmy G is kind of an LA guy. So I feel like it fits.
Yeah, it works out well for them. It's a good backup situation. Again, it's a league minimum deal. So if it doesn't work out, no big deal. Next year, you can decide whether or not you want to have him as your starter if Stafford decides to retire. It's a good fit. He's like 31, 32 years old. So I know in NFL years for a quarterback that gives him 3 or 4 years. So if you can teach him the system now and Stafford hangs it up, I think there's a smooth transition next year.
Sorry, Wayne. No, it just got real loud. The Buffs won.
Oh, cool.
Okay, so the next question would be, which wide receiver will have the biggest impact on his new team?
So my initial thought on this one was that it was going to be Curtis Samuel because he goes to Buffalo. He replaces Gabe Davis, and Gabe Davis was very productive for Josh Allen and the Bills. And Curtis Samuel is a very good receiver who I think is comparable to Davis. So I thought it was going to be him. But then I said, you know what? I'm actually going to go off road here, outside the box. The receiver that's going to have the biggest impact for his new team is a guy that doesn't even have a new team yet. And that's Michael Thomas, who I think still has a lot of gas in the tank. And whoever goes and gets him, and it could be a team like Kansas City, whoever goes and gets Michael Thomas is going to get really good season out of him.
He also could be a Bronco, Wayne. Sean Payton got that connection. I've been kind of hoping that happens. I'm not totally sure. I think he's going to go visit Miami. So yeah, that's a good one, man. Mine would be Hollywood Brown to the Chiefs because I think that they're missing another solid wide receiver. I feel like Hollywood Brown is a solid receiver. One thing I didn't know, Wayne, is that he's actually kind of tall. He's like 6 foot something. For some reason, I thought he was short because he's fast. I couldn't tell you why I thought that. But I feel like adding him with Kelsey and Rice, it's a good fit. It's a really good fit for them.
It is a good fit. I like the signing for the Chiefs, and it means that they don't have to draft a wide receiver with that 32nd pick if they don't want to, which before a lot of people had them taking receiver at 32. I think now they've come around. I didn't, by the way. Anyone who followed my mock drafts, I had them taking Tyler Guyton months ago with their first pick, the 32nd overall pick. Now everyone else is starting to do it. So like usual, Mel Kiper and Todd McShay are copying me, because I'm an NFL expert.
You are the NFL expert. Especially with your little prediction about Roma Dunze. I thought that was great, Wayne. Okay, so next question. What teams turned into contenders?
So this one was interesting because, again, I have two teams and it's two different directions, really. One of them is the Green Bay Packers. They were already contenders, and obviously Jordan Love stepped up huge at the end of the season. He looked amazing. He's going to look amazing next year. But going out and getting Josh Jacobs was a huge upgrade over Aaron Jones, even though I said I don't mind Aaron Jones personally, but Josh Jacobs is a great dual threat running back. Then they get Xavier McKinney to boost that defense. I think that the Green Bay Packers may have become the favorites in the NFC over the 49ers with those additions. And then the other team is the Chicago Bears because they just went out bananas. Keenan Allen, Gerald Everett, DeAndre Swift, Kevin Byard on the defensive line. They've still got those draft picks. I think the Bears just went from 4-13 to a team that, depending on how their rookie plays, whoever it is, could be 10-7 next year.
That's a good one, Wayne. I kind of thought the Packers too. I have two teams also. I wouldn't necessarily say, I guess for different reasons. Number one would be the Texans because they really boosted their defense. With I'm drawing a blank on all the guys that they signed, but they signed three really good defensive guys, and their head coach is a defensive head coach, and so I feel like he's going to really. I feel like he's finally getting guys in his defense that he really wants and needs. So I feel like their defense was pretty solid last year, and it's just going to get even better this year. And that's going to be nothing but great for C.J. Stroud to have that behind him, which is really surprised me because they were like a team 2 years ago. They were like 2-10, right, Wayne? Or 2-15 or whatever. So for them to go from that to making the playoffs last year to getting these guys and possibly even making a deeper run next year, I feel like they're the team that I think could possibly turn into a contender with these moves.
All right. Yeah, I think that's another team who's really well. Again, they traded away their first round pick, but yeah, I think they're still in a good spot.
Right on. I thought you might have disagreed with that one. Okay, so my other one would be the Eagles because I feel like they made some moves with Saquon, with Huff. I'm drawing a blank. They brought back C.J. Gardner Johnson. I feel like they should have never let him go. I think it was a money thing. And I think he also realized that he didn't want to be in Detroit. He wanted to be in Philly. So I feel like they just boosted an already stacked roster like we were talking about. They have all these guys. So hopefully maybe this year they put it all together.
This one I will disagree with you on because I do think that Saquon Barkley was a waste of money at the running back position. I think that he is going to break down 5-6 games into the year, and the fate of the season is going to be on Jalen Hurts passing the ball, which he just showed last season he can't do. And if that's what you're relying on him to do, you're going to be a first-round exit in the playoffs. So I think that's what we can expect again.
I knew you were going to disagree with one of my questions. Okay, next question. Who do you think or who do you see getting traded on draft day or draft night?
There's a few names. There's guys out there. Obviously, Justin Jefferson. I said I do think he is going to work out a deal with the Vikings, but if he doesn't, he's the guy that could be moved on draft day, similar to A.J. Brown when he got moved. Same scenario, Stephon Diggs, I think, is a guy who could get traded. He's been saying he wants to be traded. They've been dealing with his whole attitude for the last 2 years, but there's a lot of dead cap there. So it's kind of like you got to play it out. And then I think Courtland Sutton was a guy that you'd mentioned, Denver Broncos. He's a guy that could help them move up in the draft, maybe into like, if they want to get a quarterback, maybe they move up from 12 to 8 or something, depending on who's still on the board. And then the last guy I had was the Steelers. The Steelers are a little bit of cap hell with their situation. They need to shed some money. And I think Cam Hayward, I think they can save like $14 million by trading him. So he's a guy that could also help the Steelers move up in the draft. They want to go from 20 to 10, depending on what they're looking for. They could replace Cam Hayward with, again, Jared Verse or Dallas Turner, which would be great.
Those are very interesting, and I can totally see both those happening. Mine would be, I wouldn't necessarily say Courtland Sutton, but I'm going to say Patrick Surtain. And I feel like the only way that they're going to trade him is if they really have fallen in love with one of those top 3 guys. Because I feel like in some way we could package a deal with him to move up to one of those picks. Even though I would hate that because he's like one of the best corners in the league. But I feel like if we're completely rebuilding he's probably the one guy that we have that has value. So if we're going to trade him now would be the time. And so I feel like if we're going to get the guy that we want at quarterback, if we go that route, if Sean Payton goes that route, which I'm not totally sure he will, because like I said, I wish I could get into his mind. I feel like if he falls in love with, say, JJ, PS2 might be gone, and we might have to package to get to the 3.
Yeah, I think that he is a guy that could potentially be traded. I don't like it. I don't like if they move on from Sutton and they move on from Surtain. I still don't think they get enough to replace those guys. I think you're making the team worse. And like you said, I don't know what Sean Payton's thinking. I don't know if he's thinking, hey, let's just be really bad next year and then we'll be good. Because, dude, like that's your second year. Like even Josh McDaniels didn't get a full season.
I feel like the only way his career in Denver is going to go longer is if he drafts a quarterback. I feel like he knows that in some way that, hey, if I get a guy, I might get a little bit more leeway to breed him, to show him my offense. It's going to take a while because his offense is really hard to learn in just 1 year. So I feel like if he drafts a quarterback, then he's going to get a little bit more leeway.
All right.
Okay, so next question. Best player still remaining, free agent wise?
Yeah, again, I think, Michael Thomas, I mentioned him. I think that he's one of the best players remaining. I think people are going to be surprised with what kind of season he has next year. The other two names I have written down, Jamal Adams at safety. I think surprised that he still hasn't found a team yet. And then David Bakhtiari at tackle, that's got a guy that, again, he's not signed with anyone yet. He is a multiple all-pro tackle, could go to the Chiefs on a small deal. And then now they don't have to draft tackle or receiver in the first round. Now they're really sitting pretty.
That's a good one. I'd actually thought maybe he might go to the Jets because of his whole Rodgers love and whatever, but he said he's not. Okay, my guy is going to be another Bronco. I'm going to say Justin Simmons. I don't really understand why he hasn't gotten a job yet. Like, I feel like he's one of the best safeties in the league. I think one of the things that's hurting him is that he's older. Like we were saying, White Wayne, he's like 34. So that's not really 30. Okay, but that's later in NFL. They want to go younger always. So maybe that's what's hurting him. Maybe he wants too much money for his age, and maybe teams don't want to pay that. But he's like the one guy in the league that has intercepted Mahomes the most, and Mahomes is literally the best quarterback in the league. So that kind of shows you this guy's got some killer talent. So I don't understand why he hasn't gotten a deal yet.
I think it is just his age. Again, 30 years old. It's not that old, but for a defensive player like a safety, it's a little bit on the older side. But not only that, but the fact that the other safeties who are free agents are 24 and 25 years old. So if I'm going to sign one of these guys, why am I signing the guy who's 5 years older than everybody else?
Yeah, which sucks for him, because he's still a really good player. It's just they're like, oh, he's 30 years old. He's on the wrong side of 20. I get all that, but the guy is phenomenal. I've seen him play, like, I want to say the last couple of years, he was our best player, dude. So it just sucks to see him out on the market and not getting a job yet.
All right.
Okay, last question, Wayne. What's the player you think could still be cut or moved before the draft?
So I've talked about a few already with Justin Jefferson, Stephon Diggs, Cam Hayward. Those are guys. The two I haven't mentioned, but I'm going to. Obviously, T. Higgins is a guy who doesn't have a long-term deal yet with Cincinnati. He's franchise tagged. I don't think he wants to play on that tag. He has asked for a trade, so I think that he could still be traded. And then the other one is the guy that I mentioned last episode, Brandon Cooks. It's that time of year where he gets traded, so let's make it happen.
Where does he go to this time, Wayne?
How about San Francisco?
Sure, let's make it happen. He goes everywhere. He produces. That's a good one, Wayne. My last one would be, I had a really deep dive in this one because I was really like, who is really good still and who might be cuttable? I had a really deep dive into this. And the one name I came up with would be Nick Chubb. And I say him because he's had some injuries. Last year, he had a very brutal injury. It was his knee and his leg. I forget all of it. It was really bad. And I'm not totally sure he's going to come back from this and be the same running back that he was before. And he's getting paid I'm not totally sure what his cap number is, but it's a big one. And I feel like if they come down to it, that might be a guy that they're like, oh, we got to let him go.
Yeah, I think that's a good thought because, again, that knee injury was pretty brutal. It's the second bad knee injury that he's had. He had one in college, which is why Sony Michel got so much playing time and got drafted ahead of him. It was because of that knee injury that he had in college. So now this is the second major knee injury he's had. I mean, just running backs in general, if they stay healthy, their whole careers don't last past 27. So, I mean, he's one of those guys who got that big second deal that I said you should never give them. And look what's happening.
Yep, I'd have to agree with you on that one, Wayne.
Well, that is our topics. We also have a 2-minute warning. I know we each want to discuss something. I'll go first because it's fresh in my mind. I just finished watching The Dynasty, the docuseries on Apple about the New England Patriots, and it was a great docuseries. All the episodes were great. We talked about Aaron Hernandez. They talked about Deflategate, Spygate. They talked about Malcolm Butler being benched, even though they didn't say why. They did talk about it happening, and we still don't know why. But the reason I brought it up is because there's two things from watching The Dynasty that really had an impact on me. The first one is we hear all the time, was it Bill? Was it Tom? Who's more responsible for the dynasty? And this Dynasty docuseries, the narrator or whoever it was had such a great answer to that question. He said that question is disrespectful. And it's not disrespectful to Tom and it's not disrespectful to Bill. It's disrespectful to Bruschi and Ty Law and Darrelle Revis and all the guys who played in that dynasty, Randy Moss, Deion Branch, Julian Edelman. To say, was it just this guy or this guy and nobody else mattered is completely disrespectful to all the rest of the guys who played during that dynasty. So I think that was one thing that really sat with me. It was a great answer to that question. And the second thing was I've been struggling with my fandom. We've talked about it over the last few episodes. Who am I going to root for next year?
Yes,
and this kind of helped. This really kind of helped me settle that because I got to say to myself, you know what? I think the reason I was mad about Bill getting fired or mutually parting ways, however you want to say it, that it was just the end of the era. You know what I mean? Like, as long as he was there, it was still like the dynasty was ongoing. And I think it was me lashing out about the end of it, like a spouse in a divorce or a kid whose parents are getting divorced. You just have a really hard time with the fact that this is ending. And so realizing that helped me say, you know what? I am a Patriots fan. I am going to root for the Patriots and Gerard Mayo, and I hope they do really well. I no longer have that animosity towards them, even though this whole docuseries was a smear campaign against Bill Belichick. It was a great docuseries, and it helped me overcome some of those things.
Well, I'm glad, Wayne. I'm glad that your Patriot fandom is set in stone now, or at least for this year. I'm not totally sure how long. Maybe if Bill goes somewhere else, you might move that way. But I respect it. I really want to watch the Dynasty, and I'm going to at some point, and I haven't had the chance. So I wish I had some content back to give to you, but I don't. But I do plan on watching it. My 2-minute warning is real sweet and simple. I've talked about it before. This goes to all the trolls out there, Wayne. Okay, troll is probably the wrong word, but all these people on Twitter that think they know everything about the team and every move they should make. And all I hear on Twitter through all my Denver connections, no offense to anybody, but they all have been chiming in every time a free agent quarterback gets signed. Oh, why didn't the Broncos go after him? Oh, why didn't the Broncos sign him? Oh, why didn't the Broncos sign him? All those guys are trash. We should be glad that we didn't get any of these guys. Second, the plan has always been, I'm going to let you know because I'm an NFL expert, I'm going to let all of Broncos country know that the plan has always been that we're rolling with Stidham and we're going to draft a rookie. I don't know which rookie that's going to be. I don't know which one Sean Payton has fell in love with, but it's going to be a rookie quarterback. We're going to see Stidham for most of the year, and then at some point that rookie's going to get a start, and that's what we're going to deal with. And we're dealing with a rebuild because Sean Payton finally, sorry for my language, finally has the balls to rebuild our team, which we're doing. And if we have to sacrifice, like we were talking earlier in the episode, Wayne, another crappy year, and maybe we get Shedeur the year after that, that could be good. I don't know. But that's what I'm hoping for, and that's my little rant.
Well, I was just going to say that I completely agree with that last part of it because we've seen the Broncos parting ways with good players. There's talk about trading Sutton, right? There's talk about moving on from different players. There hasn't been any talk about bringing in any of these big name free agents. So I think this is a total tank year to get Shedeur Sanders, who's a Colorado guy, to go play for the Broncos. And the funniest part of all of this is his dad is Deion Sanders. And so what's going to happen is the Broncos are going to go 3-14 next year. They're going to get the number 1 pick, and Shedeur Sanders is going to say, I don't want to play for the Denver Broncos.
Dude, I could see that happening because Sanders has already came out and said that he doesn't want his son to play anywhere cold. And granted, we have a lot of warm days, but it does get cold in Colorado. So I don't know if that would take us off his list or what. I don't know what the plan is, but I know it's a rebuild, Wayne. So I'm just glad that the team's finally doing it because Elway was too chicken shit to do it. And Peyton's finally like, this is what's got to be done. So I hope we get one of these young guys, like I've been saying, Bo Nix and Brock Bowers in the first round. Let's do it, Peyton and Peyton.
All right. Well, that is our show. We appreciate anybody who tuned in and listened. If you listen on Spotify, thank you. Let us know what you think. Follow us on social media. Let us know on social media at NFL Experts, plural, pod. NFL Experts Pod. That is our call sign everywhere. That's where you can interact with us, give us some questions, and we will be back next week with more talk, probably about more free agency, maybe some more teams, and we might even bring in Sully if he wants to show up.
Yes, Sully. Where are you, Sully? Where are you? We need you, Sully. Thanks for joining, everyone. It was a blast. Yes, more free agency news. Please chime in, everyone. We love you guys.
He said, hey, party on.
Party on, Wayne.